Hello and welcome to session 45 live coding on Amplify. My name is Marcia Villalba. I'm a developer advocate and this is not a slide. We are going to be in the next 30 minutes building a hands-on demo, everything from scratch to the end of this project. So let's get to it. This is, as I said, not a slide. I'm basically had a picture here because this is a non-slide show. So as I said, we are going to build an Amplify project. For that, we are going to use the Amplify framework that you can find in docs.amplify.aws. There, you need to, in order to get started with this project, you need to have some requirements. So I will be doing my example with JavaScript. I think you can follow it in any other language if you're fluent in, but if you want to copy the example just as it is, maybe JavaScript and React is the one that you want to follow. So in order to get started, you need to have some prerequisites, and you can find the prerequisites in the main page of Amplify. If you check prerequisites, you need to have Node 10 or later, npm version 5 or later, Git version 2.14.1 or later. Also, you need to have an AWS account configured in your computer. If you don't know how to do it, there is a good introduction in the website. Then you need to install the Amplify library in your computer and configure it. All that I will not be doing in this video because we are starting from building the project, and that's the interesting thing. So the next step you want to do that I already did is create an empty React project. Why I did it already? For two reasons. First, because it takes a while and I want to use it in more productive things. And second, because I copy a little bit of cheat sheet in there. You will see it later to make this video a little bit faster. So just run npx create React app and put a name to your app, and that's it. Then you can run npm start in your terminal, npm start, and we both will see the same thing. So if we do localhost 3000, we are all seeing the same thing. The next thing you need to do that I also did because it takes a while is install the Amplify libraries. So in that we will install all the libraries and the UI components for React in this case. So just run npm install AWS Amplify at AWS Amplify /UI React. All that information is in the documentation page of this Amplify. So now we have our application and we can start connecting it to the Amplify. So we have our AWS account and we need to hook up this application with that. So I will open this in Visual Studio Code and then open a terminal here so we can do some work. The first thing we want to do is Amplify init. And this will initialize our project in the cloud and also in our local environment. The first thing we need to do is to put a name. I will leave the default, then an environment. I will pick dev. Then what is your editor and your language and your framework. And then I will just click enter to all the defaults. Now I want to use an existing AWS profile that I already configured. I will pick my Amplify. And now it will start initializing the project in the cloud. What is happening is creating some S3 buckets and some roles in order to set up this application in the cloud. This is all using CloudFormation. So if you want to go to your AWS account and check it here, you can see it. CloudFormation. Just make sure you're in the right region. And you can see that my last tag is create in progress is the Amplify demo, Amplify to do dev, and some name. And here I have all the different resources and the events that is happening. So that is what is going on in our terminal. It takes a little bit, but it's quite fast to create. So now we have initialized our application. It's still empty. So let's add some authentication to our application. To do that, we are doing amplify add auth. Simple as that. And then we'll add authentication against Amazon Cognito. It will create some Cognito user pools for us so we can have different accounts for users and permissions for those users. We are going to use the default configuration, but we could use an authentication with social providers like Facebook or Google or whatever, using the federation authentication. It's also possible, but I will use the default configuration that is basically username and password. I can choose what my users will sign in with. I will decide username, and then I'm just done. Nothing else I want to configure. So this takes a few seconds, and that's all we need. Now this is in our machine. Nothing has been published in the cloud yet until we do Amplify Push. This will push the changes to the cloud. So when we type Amplify Push, this happens always when you do it. It will show you this table that shows the different categories. There is Amplify works in categories like API, authorization, predictions, notifications, storage, categories that are high-level abstractions. And then it has the resource name, that is the kind of CloudFormation stack name. The operation that is being performed, it can be that there is no change, or it can be updated, or it can be created or deleted. In this case, we are creating it. So we want to create that, and we say yes. And then this takes a while. So when we added the Amplify, what happens if we go to this folder in our project, we go to Backend, we will see that we have the auth there, and here we can see a CloudFormation template. I will not open it because it's very ugly, but it's the CloudFormation template that configures our Cognito user pools and everything that Amplify needs to add the authentication. So now we can, while this is updating in the cloud, we can add something visual in our projects. So we can go to source, and we have this app.js that I will change it to something else. We'll open the terminal again. I'll create a new terminal, and I will do some magic here. CP base, this is what I was telling you that I added. That is all my cheat sheets. You will have them as well in the GitHub project afterwards. Base app.js into the source app.js. So now this change, and also we need to add the CSS. So it looks a bit better. The CSS is not doing nothing very important, but the JavaScript part, it has a couple of things. The first thing is these 4 lines, the Amplify library, the Amplify authenticator, and the sign out button for the components of UI React. You can see it there. And then it has the import of AWS exports, and this is a file with a lot of secrets from AWS, so please don't commit them into your GitHub repo. Then we are configuring our Amplify with those secrets, and then I just added in the header a button for the sign out, and then in the application, when we are rendering it, I just wrapping my application around this Amplify authenticator. Let's see if this finish. Takes a little while because it's updating things in the cloud. Not yet done. So we cannot test basically until this is done. So this is the thing with live coding, you know. But if you want to see what is happening, you can go to your CloudFormation, and now you can see in the stacks that you have the one that was created with Amplify init, this one, and then this is the one that is, according to this, is created already. That is the authentication, and you can see here it says auth. It looks ugly. The name is a generated name. Let's see. Yes, it's finished. So now we can go to our local host, and the first thing we are pop up, because this application refreshed automatically, is with a sign into our account. We don't have any usernames because this is the first time we are using the account, so we need to create an account. All this is generated by Cognito automatically and Amplify. You don't need to do anything. So I will put a name here. I will put a password. I'll put my email. I'll put a phone number, and then I will create an account. Now I need to wait for a few seconds to my email to get the verification code. I just got it, so I will type it here, 750334, and I will confirm my account. Now we are logged in, but this account is kind of empty, this page, because we have not done anything. So let's add an API now. So we go back to here in our terminal and we type Amplify add API. And now we are offered the choice of adding a GraphQL or a REST. I will choose GraphQL, and that will add an AppSync provider in the backend. So I need to provide a name for my API. The default name never works because it doesn't like these dashes, so I need just to do some formatting. Then I need to decide how I want to secure my API. I will choose Cognito User Pools, that is the same authentication that we have for our whole API. This is the most secure way for this situation. Then I don't want to do anything else. I'm done. It asks me if I have an annotated GraphQL schema. I will say no. I want some help, please. And now it will ask me what kind of schema I'm planning to build. A simple one, like a to-do list, like what we are building, something more complicated with relationships, or something with a lot of complex controls. I will give the first option because that's what we are building. And do you want to edit the schema now? I will say yes. So this will open file with our schema here. This is not what we want to build because we want to build a nodes application. So I will go to my base file here in my examples of GraphQL and copy my schema. And this schema is very similar. Instead of post or to do, it says node. And it has add model, that is a directive that will create a lot of things for us, and you will see it in a moment. And it has an authorization rule. This authorization rule will make possible that the nodes that I create are only seen by the creator of the nodes. So if we are all using the same node application, then I can only see my nodes and you can only see your nodes. So we can go back, we save this, and we can go back to the terminal. I press enter to continue, and now it will create everything that we need. Voila. If we look here in the Amplify folder, we have now an API category in our backend. So now what we want to do is to do Amplify Push. So these changes go to the cloud because everything is local until we don't do Amplify Push. So this takes a little while. It's show us the table. You see that the API is created. We say yes. And we'll also offer the capability of generating code for us. So this is something I really like from Amplify, that it generates a lot of code for us. I will go through all the defaults. And this code is all the mutations, the queries, and the subscriptions for our GraphQL schema. So we don't need to write it ourselves. So now this is doing its thing, and we can go a little bit into the details of what this model is creating. So this model, usually a GraphQL schema needs to have types in order and operations in order for the applications to do something. In this schema, we don't have any operations. So the model, when you add that directive to a type, what it will do, it will create in the schema all the operations for creating, updating, listing, reading, and deleting, in this case, nodes. So we don't need to write it ourselves. So now I want to add a little bit in the app.js because, well, we want to see this in action. So what I will do first, I will install Bootstrap. Why? Because I want my application to look a little bit prettier. If not, it will be everything anywhere. So I will do that. And then I will grab some files from my base that basically will let me add and delete nodes. So we just do cp base to And then also we need to modify the index HTML, because there we have one font that we need to add. I'll show you in a second. So let's put this here so we can see. So let's go to the public first. On the index, we added this line that is a font, importing a font. That's nothing new. And then in the app.js is where we did most of the changes. And in here we can see the header remained the same. And now we have a component to add a node. So basically it will be a nice box where we can type something and we can add a node. So if you see that render, it's doing basically that. And it has a little button that allows us to add the node. And then we add a node list component that allows us to display all the nodes. So that's what this piece of JavaScript React component is doing. And it has this delete node button that is a little trash bin. And for that is where we needed to add this import of the font. Then we have in the main component, in the app component, we added a couple of functions, the delete and the add node function. And these ones are the ones doing the logic against the backend. So these are more or less both of the same. And also when we load the component, we are also calling the API. So the three of them are doing more or less the same. The first thing they do is use the API library. This is one of these Amplify libraries that comes in the library. It has the GraphQL capacity to do GraphQL operations. And then we pass the name of the operation, in this case, delete node, and the input. In some cases, there is no need to pass an input. In other ones, there is. So what is this delete node, list nodes, and create nodes? They're imported from GraphQL queries and GraphQL mutations. And if we go now to our source, we see this GraphQL folder that appeared here. This is what the code generation did for us. This is not something it appeared because I put it there. This happens when we did the code generation. It created these mutations, queries, schema.json, and subscription.js. This is all auto-generated by Amplify. And whenever we do, I want to create a node, we just use this. And it's just nice there. Every time we change the API, this will update and it will be in sync with the operation. So you don't need to worry. So now our thing just finished. So we can go to our application and we see that we can add a node. Hello, Summit. Hello, AWS. We can delete nodes and things like that. So now this looks good. And I want to move a little bit to the deployment of this. So in our console, we can type Amplify Console. And if you're logged into your AWS account in the right region, it will open your Amplify Console for that particular environment. This is dev. This is when we did Amplify init. We have to put an environment name. And in here, you can see that we have the authentication and the API, and we have all the different deployment activities when we deployed something, some new categories or something. And if we go to authentication, we can view our Cognito user pools here. We can do some changes if we want in our authentication. There's all the commands, the save for API. We can see our app sync. We can see our DynamoDB table that is hosting the nodes and everything here. If we go one level up to the demo, Amplify to do, the first thing you will pop up if you haven't connected to GitHub is to connect it to GitHub. And we want to do that. Why? Because this will allow the CI/CD deployment of this application. So now, the first time you want to connect Amplify to GitHub, you have to go through a process. I already did that, so it's not something I will do in this video, but it's a very guided process. The next step is to connect it to a repository. So you need to grab this code and put it into GitHub. I created a repo already, but it's empty. So let's push that code into GitHub. I will grab everything and commit. This is the typical commit for any project. And then I will do that, what I brought from GitHub, and this will push all my changes into GitHub. And now we have our project here. So now in Amplify, I can connect it to the right repository, demo Amplify to do. Then I pick a branch, I click next, and now it will ask me to create a new environment for my backend. So every time something changes in the GitHub, I will deploy my backend resources and my frontend with every commit. And that's really cool. So I will create a new environment and I will call it staging. And I just use an existing role I have to do that. There is a process for creating a new role. So whenever we have new changes in GitHub, it will deploy it to a new environment in the backend. So now we are ready, we save and deploy, and this will start connecting. So we have this view that should be appearing here. That is provisioning, building, deploying, and verify. This takes a while because it's running through the whole application and provisioning from GitHub, then building the whole thing. Here you could put, you can change the scripts and you can put the different unit tests if you want. In the deployment, it's deploying your backend, and then verifying, you can have some kind of testing as well. This takes a little while and it's getting greener, but I want to show you an app already that I have deployed, and it's configured. It has these steps. Here it is. And when it's configured, you will get a link that you can basically open, and your application is here. You can see there is the search notes. I will go there in 2 seconds. And then you can see in the backend environments that there is the dev and staging. And for each of them, you will have different resources. You will have different API, AppSync. You will have different tables. You will have different everything. So that's very powerful, and it's a very simple way of having this CI/CD deployment pipeline. So we can go to search now, because as I show you here, it's already deployed. So if we go back to our application and we go to our schema, to this file. So where is that file? Well, you might be wondering because it's a little bit hard to find. You go to Amplify, Backend, and API, and in here you will find that file. So there you need to type at searchable. And that's it. Then you do Amplify Push. And that will then update your API. So what will happen? I will show you well, let's do this and I will show you a little graph of what is happening. So now you can see that API needs an update. Now I'll click yes. And then it will ask me if I want to generate my code again. So the new operations will appear and I will say yes. So I will go through all the defaults. And now it's going to update my changes in the cloud. So I want to show you a little diagram of what is happening. So this is an example. We have the searchable at here. And what happens now is that this is what we had before. We have the Dynamo table. We have all the operations, the create, read, update, delete that was generated by AppSync with Amplify. And now when we add this searchable, this new part appears here. So basically we have an Elasticsearch index created for us and also a Lambda function. So every time you create a new node, it will put a new node in the Dynamo table, and that every time will go and sync it to the Elasticsearch index. So whenever you search, you will always have the latest and greatest here. Also, it will create the operation to search post, and you can search through a partial march, you can search for exact march, and you have many, many different ways of doing search in Elasticsearch, and you can use those to filter your nodes, for example. So this is what is going on. So this takes quite a long time to deploy, so I will not show it to you how to do it, because there is not much to show, but we can check the demo that is deployed already in this project. And basically I have these 3 nodes here, and if I search for something, it just shows me that. If I search for empty, then it shows me everything. And if I search for something that doesn't exist, like my name, then it doesn't show me anything. And the more I add nodes, the more I can search. So this is pretty nice. So if we go to the backend environments, we can see in this one, we can see in the API, we have the Elasticsearch domain, and we can see it if we want to. We can see the tables, and we can also see the AppSync here. If you want the code to add the search to your application, you will find it in base here, app03. So you can just basically copy that, and you will have the search nodes, and you will have the search node component that is showing that little box to do search here. Nothing fancy, it's just that little box. And then in the application, in the main application, there will be a new function to search the node that is applying a filter. Basically, an exact match needs to happen, and then calling the API in the GraphQL operation with that filter. So this is what is doing that file, so you just can't use it. You can find the resources for this application in this GitHub repository that you find here in the URL. So this is the place where all the code is available for you to try it out. I hope you enjoyed this session and you learned something new and you got inspired to try AppSync and Amplify. There is so many other things that you can do with it. If you have any questions, please ask me on Twitter. I have my messages open, and I have in my YouTube channel many videos on Amplify and AppSync, so I'm happy to answer the questions there and show you more in-depth demos as well. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Ciao, ciao!